Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Tutorials. Today we're going to be going over a very interesting mechanic for tankiness, for one of the components of tankiness, and it is known as one of two things. It is known as either A, sustain, or B, healing. In fact, it usually goes by both because sustain is a more all-encompassing term, whereas healing is less all-encompassing. Healing is not necessarily always sustain, and sustain is always what I'm talking about. So we're going to focus on the word sustain for this, and I'm going to generally try to avoid healing because although healing is part of sustain, it's not actually like the main component of what sustain is trying to do. So we have to get into the nitty-gritty of this, the nitty-gritty of the sustain, shall we? So what is sustain? How do you define sustain? To do this, I'm going to have to bring up a notepad, and we're going to start writing some stuff down, because that's what I usually like to do. So first off, sustain is generally the concept that you are healing more than you are dying. And this might sound a little weird because, well, isn't all healing then considered sustain? The answer to that question is no. All healing is not sustain. And the reason for this is that sustain requires you to heal more than you're taking in damage. The problem with this is that if you can heal yourself, but you're dying anyway, like if it doesn't seem to matter how much you seem to heal, maybe you just use up all the potions that you have on your bar, maybe you have healing mechanics built into your character, like for instance, we have let's see here. On the spirit boons, there's a critical strikes with shapeshifting skills. Have a 3%, will heal you for 3% of your maximum life. 102 is what I currently have. Why is my ponytail sticking up like that? Recently, like, my ponytail has just been deciding to do whatever it wants to do, and I don't really understand. And I'm going to fix it right now, because it's bothering me. That jank's sticking up like a samurai do-jank. This is like the second time this has happened. I'm trying to look at myself in the video. I'm like, wait a minute, why is my ponytail sticking up like that? So, this particular ability, Masochistic, is one way that you can add in healing to your build. But there's like hundreds of ways that you can add in healing to your build. Small heals that come from various sources, like for instance, you can set up things like... I know on the Barbarian there's one, but I'm not really sure if there's a passive on the Druid that does the same thing. But there's things like you get healing for the more fury that you spend. We can go over to the Barbarian and we can take a look at this one too. But there's tons of different abilities that in the game will allow you to heal yourself over a certain period of time. Now, why is healing yourself so important to components of tankiness? It's not just about not dying. I mean, if I've got 60,000 life, why not use it? You know what I mean? Like, well, you know, hey, there's a boss there, you know, let's say I got 60,000 HP, I'm a beefcake, right? Oh, yes, the meatiness of me knows no bounds. Ah! Right? Yeah, you're a beefcake, 100%. You know what? Agreed, sure. Now, the boss hits you for 30,000 damage, right? So you have now taken 30,000 damage, and now your 60,000 beefcakeness has been brought down to 30,000 HP. Right? Sustain is the process by which you are sustaining that beefcakeness. This HP, and a lot of people don't understand this, this 60,000 HP is meaningless, completely pointless, and absolutely stupid if you can't sustain it. If you cannot sustain your HP, then you're going to die anyway. Let's take a couple examples here, and I'll show you exactly what I mean just by using numbers. So let's say you're fighting a boss, and the boss does a 100,000 damage hit, right? And you're just amazing, and you've got, you know, like 85% DR, and so you take, you know, only 15,000 damage. Okay? How many hits can you take before you die? Well, at 15,000 per, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can take 3 hits, and the 4th hit will kill you, right? So you can do this. You can do this 3 times. So you can take 3 hits. right? 3 hits isn't a lot. The boss might be pumping these out by the dozens. What does it matter to the boss whether you got 60,000 or 16,000? He doesn't care, because he's just going to try and kill you. So he's going to keep popping out these 15k hits. He's just going to keep on bopping you on the head. He's going to go, and on the 4th hit, you are going to die. The reason why sustain is so important is because it allows you to use this buffer space that you have to be able to absorb more hits. So for instance, if he's dishing out 15,000, and let's say I can't necessarily out heal the boss. So like, there's not always going to be a situation where you're going to be able to out heal the boss, because bosses are obviously one of the highest damage, mechanics in the game, right? You got like Uber Lilith and things like that, and they're going to hit you over and over again, and you've got to be able to out heal basically the damage that's incoming to you from this boss. Well, here's the problem with this. If you are able to, say, heal yourself for 10,000 HP every, I don't know, let's say 4 hits, and the boss is hitting you for 15,000 HP every 3 hits, then eventually it's going to end up in a negative. So at this point, if we just take that 15,000 and so 15,000 times 3, so we end up with 15k times 3, so we get 45,000 damage per 4 hits, right? And we're able to heal ourselves for 10,000 HP per 4 hits, which means we can counter at least 10,000 of each hit, but there's still 5,000 left, and we're still going to continually take damage, right? But the number of hits that we're capable of taking at this point has increased. This is the magic part that actually makes sustain so valuable, because now we go from only being able to take 3 hits to now we can take 100,000 damage hit minus 85%, 15,000, every single time he does a 4-hit cycle. We're going to take 45,000 damage, right? So our 60,000 HP is going to get subtracted by 45,000, which is going to only leave us with a total of 10,000 HP. Or sorry, not 10,000. Oh, my quick math is terrible. 15,000 HP. So we're going to have 15,000 HP left. However, we are healing ourselves for 10,000 per 4 hits, right? So every 4 hits, we're getting a 10,000 HP bonus, which is like not too absolutely terrible, but it's not great. So we add 10,000, right? So now our HP, instead of being at 15,000, is now at 25,000, right? So we have enabled ourselves to take 1 additional hit. We can now take 4 hits instead of 3 hits. So before, we were only able to take 3 hits without dying. However, because we healed ourselves for 10,000 HP during that madness, we were able to take 1 additional hit to our damage output, which allowed us to survive that last crucial hit that was going to kill us. So we're going to add in the 4th hit at this point, which is how we're going to get that 4th hit. And so we go from 15,000 times 3, 45,000, 10,000 per 4 hits. We tag on our additional hit, which is going to bring us down to a 10,000 HP left, right? Well, eventually we're going to heal ourselves for another 10,000 HP, which may or may not happen sometime before we get donked again, which is going to give us a total of 20,000 and may allow us to take an additional hit. The best way to think about this is that life is very similar to a buffer zone. If you are an adult and you have a bank account, you probably know exactly what I'm saying. You can't, like balance your bank account like down to the penny. It doesn't work that way. Like, you never know what exactly is going to go on a regular basis. You don't know exactly how much things are going to cost, whether the taxes will go up, whether you're going to need gas, whether your kid wants a candy bar. There are tons of different considerations to make, and you have to have a buffer zone in place to protect you from things like this. So when you think about your HP and how sustain works as a way to basically create a situation where you're no longer hitting 0 because you're healing yourself essentially for more HP than you're taking. Now, because sustain requires you to actually heal yourself for more than the damage you're taking in, most people cannot reach like the level of sustain required, and instead they are just simply healing themselves And when you heal yourselves for less than the amount that you're taking, it causes other issues. So eventually you will die. So if you're not actually reaching the point of sustain, you are actually in a point of drain. So it's a what was it called? I'm trying to think of the term. Attrition. That's the term I'm looking for. Attrition is basically a term that I can even pull it up on Google real quick. Definition. The action or process of gradually reducing the strength or effectiveness of someone or something through sustained attack or pressure. And what this basically means is that you are slowly dying. So if you are able to reach sustain, then you are healing yourself for more than the damage that you are taking. If you are not able to reach the point of sustain, then you are under attrition. And attrition means that you will eventually die. It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of calculating, like, how many attacks is it going to take before I eventually reach the point where the monster is going to overwhelm my healing and eventually kill me. If you can manage to maintain a sustain of some type, you will be far better off in most situations as far as tankiness is concerned. And the reason for this is because you will be able to heal every single time the monster attacks you. So even if they dish out 10,000 damage and you have 60,000 HP, then you can heal that right back up to full. The more sustain you have, the better. However, let's go over the negative points of sustain. So first off, number one, the negative points of sustain are this. Sustain will never prevent you from getting one shot. All right. However, it will make being one shot less likely. It's a contradiction, right? Or at least it seems to be a contradiction. So why is it that sustain will never prevent you from being one shot, but it also at the same time will make it less likely for you to be one shot? The answer to that question lies in the maximum HP that you have. If you have 60,000 HP, then you have a protection against a one shot up to 59,999 damage, which means that if you take 59,999 damage, you will not die, right? The problem with this is this only works if you are at maximum. So while your HP can potentially protect you from a one-shot, it only works if you are at maximum and can fail you if you are not. So for instance, a hypothetical scenario. Let's say, for instance, I am sitting at half health, which is 30,000 HP, right? And I am fighting a boss that does 100,000 damage to me. And the boss can hit me pretty dang hard because I'm not exactly the tankiest beast in the world, but I have about, say, let's say about 65% damage reduction. 65% damage reduction isn't bad, but it's not exactly the best thing in the world, right? Now, if you run this on a calculator, what you're going to find out is that I don't necessarily have enough HP to be able to sustain this. So 100,000 minus 65% is 35,000 damage, which means that my minimal half HP, but this half HP that I have, is not sufficient to stop me from getting killed by the boss. The boss will kill me if I am sitting at half HP. So in this scenario, sustain, while it will not prevent you from getting one shot by, say, something that does 60,001 damage, because it offers you no protection higher than your HP offers. So your HP is already giving you a buffer zone that will protect you against one-shots, because as long as you're at full HP, you can't be one-shot by those higher damage effects. However, as soon as your HP falls below maximum, you lose that protection, and you are now in a situation where you are vulnerable. This is an issue because you don't have sustain. Now, as a character with sustain, who can heal himself for usually more than what the boss or monster is hitting you for, you can heal this back up to 60,000 relatively quickly. So heal back to full. By healing back to full, you are now creating a situation where the 60,000 damage, or HP, is now buffering you correctly versus the damage which will income next. This is one of the fallacies that a lot of people don't realize about maximum HP, is that maximum HP does not protect you from one-shots unless you are actually at full HP. And this is why sustain is so important when it comes to maximum HP, because if you cannot sustain the high maximum HP numbers that you are trying to obtain, then the maximum HP is basically worthless. Because if you're floating at a really low number, and the boss hits you for a really high amount of damage, this 60,000 is meaningless because now it's going to go off of whatever your current HP is, and it doesn't care what your maximum HP is. You're like, but I got 60,000 maximum HP, and I'm like, but you were sitting at 20,000 actually at that moment. So yeah, like I one-shotted you, and there was really nothing you could do about it. Number 2, healing in Diablo 4 messes with Fortify. I don't know exactly why this is. I went over this in my previous video, and basically it's something to do with the fact that when you take damage, you also take damage to your Fortify, and then when you heal above the Fortify, and it does cause some issues with the way that Fortify works, and you'll notice that the healing process actually kind of like screws with Fortify a little bit. I don't necessarily like this, and I hope that eventually they fix it, because I think it's a little jankety at the moment. Like, it shouldn't be that when you heal yourself for a certain amount of damage that you immediately also lose fortification, but that is unfortunately how it works right now. Now, this is not necessarily a problem, if you can spam Fortify. So if you have enough Fortify, if you're generating Fortify quickly enough, in fact, let me write it that way. If you generate Fortify quickly enough, it generally just tends to work really well in tandem. So if you can generate Fortify quickly enough, it is not an issue. However, if you are having trouble generating Fortify, you will notice a problem with this. It does cause some issues. Dog's over there chewing on a plastic cup. Another downside to healing. Healing is one of those things that you need exactly when you need it. So I'm not really quite sure how to put this, but like, you know, like if I'm dying, I need a heal immediately, right? So if I'm in a situation where I'm in danger, like in the situation where I have 30,000 HP left and the boss is about to hit me for 35k, then I need a heal right then. Okay? Healing, unfortunately, in games like this, is not always something that you can on-demand create. There are different kinds of healing, and the problem is that some kinds of healing are less effective as others to dish out different types of damage, to deal with different types of damage. This is an issue for the types of healing, and I feel like this is a good segue to go into the types of healing. So what are the types of healing? The types of healing are considered spike heals. Spike heals are generally large heals that can either full heal you or close. Spike heals are generally things that you utilize to save your life in dangerous situations. Like, for instance, when you're being hit by a boss by 35,000 damage and you only have 30,000 HP, you're going to have to spike heal yourself to prevent that from killing you. And the next kind is heals over time, or HOTS is generally what they're referred to. HOTS are usually small heals that take place over a prolonged period of time, and these HOTS are generally very poor for preventing spike damage, so very poor at spike damage. However, they are very good at sustain. So if you're not taking large spikes of damage, you know, like bam, like Take that, sucker. Bam! Take that, sucker. Like, if you're not taking really big spikes of damage, HOTS tend to be extremely effective because they heal you over a prolonged period of time, and that prolonged period of time can help generate the sustain that you need to counter the incoming damage, as long as the incoming damage is not spike damage. Spike damage is a big issue. And I could write in up here, spike heals are good. These are good at countering spike damage, right? Then there's a third kind of heal, which is a little strange, and these are like okay in general for sustain, but not really that good for reliability, I guess would be the term. And what these are called is conditional heals. Also intermittent heals. These come in various forms. Like, for instance, on this particular character, I'm utilizing a heal that comes from Iron Skin. And I think I took it off just temporarily for the Fortify effect. But, for instance, in this particular case, I'm utilizing Tactical Iron Skin, which gives me 10% of the barrier's original amount of life per second, as life per second. So it's a intermittent hot, which is probably even worse than what I explained before, because it only goes off once every 12 seconds. It changes in the amount of HP that it actually heals you for. So it is a heal for 10% of the barrier's original amount as life per second. And the barrier changes depending on how much life you're missing. So it's 70% of your missing life for 5 seconds, which means that if I'm missing a lot of life, it's a large heal. And if I'm missing a tiny bit of life, then it's a small heal, and so forth and so on. Another very odd situation of intermittent healing that is kind of strange is the crit poison. So when I go to this guy, you'll see that I have an effect that basically gives me a heal every single time I crit. Well, what's my crit percentage? Can I guarantee those crits on a regular basis? Is that going to be enough to sustain me over the long term? I don't know. The answer to the question is invariably going to come down to feeling. I know this sounds kind of weird, but it's feeling. So you have to get out there and you actually have to attack things. You actually have to go through the process of playing your character in the content, seeing how much heals you need, and eventually you will get to the point where you are generating the heals that you need to sustain yourself. Sustain is very important because it is not reliable to utilize potions as your method of sustain. Because, number one, you can run out of potions. It doesn't take a very long time before you are completely out of potions. There's only 9 potion slots, and I think you can bring that up a little bit further if you go into it. But you generally don't want to rely on potions completely as your sustain. And there's other methods, like this one right here is heal for 3% of your maximum life for each 100 fury spent. So you get a 3% heal every single time you burn 100 fury, which isn't bad. And there's a whole lot of other ways, like on the Necromancer, there are blood orbs that you can utilize. So every single time you generate a blood orb, you can utilize the blood orbs to heal yourself. There are tons of different ways that you can generate blood orbs. One of them has to do with an aspect, which gives you like a 40% chance to create a blood orb every single time you create a corpse, or consume a corpse, rather. And if you go take a look on some of these, the ones that make blood orbs, I think it's this one. Blood orbs heal you for 15% of your maximum life when you pick them up. So another way that you can add in a little bit of sustain. A lot of different characters have abilities that will heal themselves. Like, for instance, on the werewolf druid, there is a, I think it's called the, not war cry, but blood howl. I think it's blood howl. Applies a heal every single time you use it. The rogue also has abilities that can add in sustain. So let's take a look at some of the rogue's abilities as well. I know this video has gone on for quite some time, but I do feel like sustain is one of those things that's extremely important for keeping your character alive, because you have to be able to top off that maximum HP that you fought so hard to get with all those items. For this particular character, there's a couple different ones that you can use, and I'm trying to remember where they are. This one right here, which is Mending Obscurity, gives you a heal for 3% of your maximum life 1 per second, basically every time you're stealthed. So while you are stealthed, and you can bring this up to 3, so you can literally give even more of this. So every time you stealth up, you know, you're going to get a heal that way. And going through some of the character trees, you'll find a myriad of ways to get yourself extra heals here or there built into the effects that will allow you to sustain yourself in the majority of combat, so that you're not just slowly dying by attrition. Going over each one of your characters and trying to figure out a way to sustain is definitely going to be very valuable to your character. Even if it's just, you know, crits with werewolf skills or shapeshifting skills give you a heal, or every time you spend 100 fury you get a 3% heal, or when you use your iron skin you get a heal over time, or when you stealth on your, you know, your rogue, you get a heal. There's tons of different ways that you can add in the heals to your build, including some very interesting unique items, which I feel like we can also cover as well, is that there are things like Temerity Pants, but also I believe I have an image of Andariel's Visage. I should have an image of Andariel's Visage. And Andariel's Visage is a really cool one because it gives you a 2% lifesteal, which does go up, by the way, I think, when you upgrade the item. But 2% lifesteal is pretty amazing. That is another way that you can add in an additional form of life. You can also add in things like Life on Kill. Life on Kill is not my general favorite, but it definitely is one way that you can add in a little bit of sustain to your character. Overall, I definitely recommend that if you're trying to make a tanky character, that you find a way to add in some sustain to your character, because you never want to be in a situation where you're just slowly dying from attrition, and eventually you just end up dead. Because that's exactly what attrition means. Attrition means that you cannot sustain yourself, you slowly are dying, and eventually you do. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about something as simple as sustain. And as always, keep watching.